That's all I have, so I will hand it over to Jim.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I appreciate the intro, and I appreciate everyone showing up to learn a little bit about how we are talking to our customers about remote working goals, how to achieve that through a few different methods. I want to go over some technologies that are out there in the market right now, being used by our customers and by people around the world. And we'll see how some light asset management can help to sort of bridge the gaps and fill in the holes of those types of technologies and the way they are today. So as people come in, please join us, make yourself at home. Use the chats. If you have a question, there's a Q&A portion as well. I'll be trying to keep an eye on that as we go. So just getting into the session, the agenda. Let me explain what we're going to be discussing here. Try and keep it pretty high level, conversational. I don't want to get into the weeds too much. I've been told I get into the weeds too much, and so we're going to try not to do that. But we're going to go over the description of the problem. In truth, sort of why you're here in the first place, and explain what exactly it is we're trying to accomplish. We're going to go over some workflow requirements, because once we figure out what the problem is, we got to figure out what we actually need to achieve to solve the problem and what those requirements might be. I'm going to go into some solutions. I'm not going to talk too much about the technical aspects of these, because they can vary from solution to solution and vendor to vendor and person to person that you ask. So we'll go over solutions like VPN, which is a very wide-ranging topic, cloud, which is an even wider-ranging topic, and then asset management, which is somewhere in the middle of those, and how those all fit together. We're going to do a demo. I'm going to just do a little demo. I don't like to press too many buttons, especially if you're not used to seeing the application. It's not going to make much sense what I'm doing, but I'll show you sort of what it looks like to have a VPN on my desktop, to be using asset management to sort of do some of the things that we can do through a VPN. And what I'll not be covering is, I won't be covering sort of what the last mile is, and sort of what the problems might be connecting to your desktop from the cloud or from VPN. There's copious problems out there with people trying to get access to internal networks, and talking about how their ISPs work or don't work. I won't be getting into streaming because really that's the streaming aspects of some third-party vendor solutions can be quite complex and costly, and it sort of just builds a whole infrastructure around something that we hope won't be lasting forever. But we know now that we can work this way, and so that's the intention here, is to sort of let you know how we think we can work this way. And I won't be talking about third-party magic. There's lots of stuff out there that claims to do just about everything. So I'm going to keep it pretty bound to sort of what we know, what's out there, what our people are using, what we have experience with, and how we know that our customers are working the best. So with that, and thanks for the some attendees that have joined since I first started. Just went over the session agenda so far, so you haven't missed anything. So let's start talking about the problem. The problem is that centralized storage workflow is out there. Centralized storage workflow has been out there for 20 years. Back from the early days when I was working with Avid on the Midway, soon to be Unity product, dating myself back into the 90s, we envisioned centralized storage and collaborative storage in that way. And it's going strong ever since. Now multiple vendors and a new one every month, it seems like, has a strong shared storage story out there, because it's very important, and we're used to working that way, because we're used to working with large file sizes, and ever since the HD and then finally the 4K, 6K, 8K, and everything around that has come around. The large file sizes required large storage, required fast access to storage, full access, random access across the entire project load that you have, all the different volumes, all the different subsets of storage allocation in the facility. And it required project-based storage with security for project-based facilities that have multiple clients, multiple jobs, categories of media coming in and out, and the audits that happen to make sure file systems aren't sharing assets between multiple clients and things like that. So all of those things we're really used to working with. None of it works with remote editing. And basically we're stuck now having to sort of reinvent how we work, and we're stuck having to assist our customers in reinventing how they work because large file sizes are bad. Full access is difficult, and project-based storage is difficult. And so I'll go over some of the reasons for that, and I'll go over some of the things that people are doing to try and make a workflow happen, even though they're so used to working in these types of environments with this type of technology. So we're going to start out with, and I'm going to center everything on hybrid, on-site, and remote, because I feel like that's where my customers are coming from. I've only had a couple people who are doing full remote, and it's difficult for them to sort of gauge, what they should be doing in that case, because all in the cloud is, while it seems like a pie in the sky, it seems like the best idea and this holy grail, it really does bring up a whole lot more interesting problems. So even some people that are fully remote want to have an own on-site, on-prem storage, own that portion of it, even if it's just caching for the cloud or for private web apps access. So I'm going to go with a hybrid on-site and remote workflow when I talk about these, because some people will always be in the facility and some people will always be remote, maybe not the same people each time. So starting out with the problem of large file sizes. We deal with this in facility quite a lot. Storage has gotten huge. I mean, our smallest shared storage system is 32 terabytes, which is something that is inconceivable, 15, 20 years ago. And so the project volume can be very large. When you start to move all of that over to the wide area network or to cloud storage, then for it to become accessible on the client desktops, that upload process is the instantaneous thing that you'll see that will start to really drag you down when it comes to, what is it going to take to get this project fully loaded up to the cloud, and you see the time ticking away as those files are uploading. Maybe some people are lucky and they have a really fast network connection, but a lot of people are sharing that same internet connection with the rest of the house traffic. So if they start to flood the pipe, the phones go out, so you can't just do that. And so they throttle it down and they just wait and they wait and they wait. On the other side of it, because those files are so large, the folks who are in the field getting access to these things wait and wait and wait, because they're dealing with home internet connections through their ISP, and they're not going to be incredibly fast. Even if they are incredibly fast, these files are huge. So this is the initial problem that we find, is that large file sizes are the first thing that you notice that are going to be an impediment to you working remotely. What's the answer to that? Well, the simple answer is to not have large file sizes. It's very simple these days to look back for a lot of us who have been through multiple generations of proxy workflows. I remember when HD first came on the scene, nobody was using uncompressed HD. Everybody was proxying everything down from tape onto highly compressed HD media. And that's the case with 4K today. Of course, a UHD or a 4K image at camera compression is still very large. So encoders come in, and the encoder can take the place of that image with a proxy, and the proxy can be sent to the cloud, and thereby you're in that same old proxy workflow again, except it's not the fault of the in-house storage size or speed, it's the fault of how you're connecting to that storage or the cloud storage in the field. So encoding is one way to do that. So we'll call that requirement one. Requirement one is either you increase the speed to levels that you're probably never going to see consistently and reliably, or you need to transcode proxy all of that footage in order to get usable copies in the field. The second thing that we want, the requirement that we have for shared storage and for collaborative editorial is full access. So full access just means that, I want to be able to see everything that's in the facility, because I don't know what I'm going to need per se any given time. So you see these three guys or ladies or whoever are working in this facility, they're all connected directly to the facility storage, and they're all seeing everything. The proxy files, the transcoded, the raw, all the B-roll shots that were going on, the graphics, maybe graphics going back multiple projects, everything is there for them to use, and that's the way it should be in a centralized storage environment. Now you get out to the cloud, and all he's getting is the proxies. Now we've gotten past the proxying of the raw files or the transcoded in-house masters, but now he's just dealing with the proxies out in the field. So when he wants to get a copy of that graphic that he used 2 shows ago that he wants to repurpose for this one, if he wants to get access to some B-roll, if he wants to get access to maybe some of the transcoded masters that he can use to re-encode because maybe the proxy didn't come out right, or there's too much artifacting and he needs to be able to see it a little better to do some CG on it. You know, he wants to get access to that. We need an alternate path. And so that really becomes the second requirement, is I need an alternate path to get into the facility. So what you're uploading to the cloud, in this case, we're talking about cloud storage, not VPN. What you're uploading to the cloud is not enough for me. I need to get an alternate path to everything. And that's really the second requirement that we can talk about that will really help us to become better at this collaboration, this collaborative workflow. So let's talk about now project-based storage, another challenging thing. Project-based storage is, you know, pretty common for the past 20 years, ever since, you know, Avid started talking about workspaces and talking about how you can permission workspaces in different ways. And now with Facilis technology, the last 16 years, we've been doing project-based volumes. That's the way our customers want it, and we're very good at creating this workflow for our customers. So I have 3 projects here: Costco, Macy's, and Sears. You know, used to be Coke and Pepsi. I guess we can, you know, it's a competitive thing. And so you have all these 3 companies in the same facility, and you got to make sure they're secured from each other, that the same people aren't seeing everything, especially if there's people who have access to this media that are part of the client's entourage. You don't want them to see the other stuff in the room. That's easy in the facility because these are all virtual volumes. These are all spaces that I can permission easily, workstation, user, and all this stuff. But when it comes to what are you doing on the cloud, well, unless you're really involving some third-party magic, or you're really getting in deep into, you know, bucket permissions and all of that, you're just kind of throwing everything up there. And that's kind of what happened in the spring. You know, we had people like Sony Studios who would never allow anything into the facility in terms of internet connection. And then, you know, March or April came around and they just kind of threw up their hands and said, I guess we got to do this. You know, and so a lot of facilities did the same thing. And the way they did it was they said, okay, let's get everything we can up to the cloud, even if that means that we're not going to have the security. And so over time, people saw this was happening and they said, you know, we just can't have it. We just can't have this lack of security because everything is existing in the same place. The people who aren't working on those projects are seeing all of that media. So that's a bad thing. So let's call our third requirement here security. Easy enough. You need to maintain security even if you're working remotely. And that's going to be a major part of sort of what solution you choose and what solution you go with. Once again, not talking about third-party stuff here, just talking about, I got a cloud bucket, what can I do with it? So moving on a little bit, let's talk about sort of the VPN solution. Now, the first thing that happened when the pandemic hit was we had a lot of customers coming to us and saying, hey, I have this VPN into the network that I used from time to time when I go up to my lake house. So how do I use this to work? I've only used it before just to get remote desktop and things like that. So we say, okay, well, this is how you do it. And so we instructed a lot of our users on how to use VPN. So one thing we told them was, you know, once it's configured, you can access all the internal network resources from home, and that's really cool. That's the theory behind it. Not always the case, because network resources are often based upon your authentication, and authentication is sometimes based upon your workstation at work, or you know, there's lots of rules about how you get access to network resources when you're in a facility that's IT based. So, you know, just mounting willy-nilly network drives may not work from home. And so, you know, we figured out that, okay, our solution is actually pretty good at this, because we just require a username and a password, and we're not going to look at all your other aspects of this. We're just going to say, okay, you're authenticated to use this volume. Here you go. We don't look at any of the other network resources around. So we started to do this pretty well. Now, this can solve security. This can solve the idea that you have to get security for these volumes when you're remote, and the security works the same as it would in the facility. You're just giving a username and a password, and that's the same authentication you do when you're in the facility itself. And this can solve the full access problem as well, because it's not just one big bucket. It's not just one big cloud drive. You are talking to multiple volumes of projects and graphics and everything else like you would be in the facility. So that's really good. It doesn't necessarily solve the speed or proxy issue. You could still be talking to or trying to get access to these huge files. And really, if you don't have access to anything but the huge files from the VPN, you can't do much about that. Maybe you could proxy them locally, but you have to download all the heavy files first before you do that. So doesn't solve that part of it. So just a VPN, not quite there. Now cloud is, so ubiquitous. Everyone talks about it. Everyone talks about how they use cloud. Everyone talks about it differently. But the theory is that, once everything is uploaded, all the assets are then available for use anywhere in the world. You can log into your account with your keys and your authentication, and you can see a cloud explorer, and you can look at everything, and you can use that. And lots of third-party people out there saying, third-party meaning their job is to sort of add value to this. They're saying, sure, we can magically make your file systems appear through a cloud intermediary and do all this stuff, and you'll never know that you're not working in the facility. I'm not going to get into all of that because it would take days to go through all the different solutions and how they claim it works. And I'm sure some of them work really well, but we're talking about sort of what you can do today, to make this work. So what it doesn't solve, though, is that basic cloud, Google Drive, Dropbox, your bucket on Amazon. It's pretty weak. It doesn't do anything really. It doesn't give you the security until you really dig into it, and you subscribe to everybody to a different authentication buckets. It doesn't give you full access, and it doesn't help with speed necessarily. It doesn't do any proxies for you. Like I said, some cloud services will proxy for you and things like that. But basic cloud, just moving stuff to the cloud for access to the users, really doesn't do any of those things. So it's kind of the worst case unless you build a lot of services around it. Then MAM comes in. So MAM, it's different than the other two because it's not thought about as a way to get access to the media. It's thought about a way to track media. Media asset management system tracks the media, manipulates the media, lets you perform automations on the media. But is it really unto itself a way to access media? It can be. So once everything is indexed, all the media is accessible. And if you have a web interface, and that's pretty important, it's available anywhere through the web interface. Now, you may not think of this as a good way to sort of bulk move files around for entire projects to desktops anywhere, but it can get the job done in such a way as to sometimes be better than a VPN if you're using the VPN simply to download things. HTTP can be faster than VPN depending on how you're set up. So it can solve security because I'll go over sort of what the MAM does for us and allows us to set up different catalog permissions for people so they can only see the part of the catalog, the part of the database that's been indexed for their project. It can solve full access because if everything's indexed, everything is there. I'll even show you how you can go through and see every single volume and every single folder as if it's local to you in the facility because it's been indexed in that location. And it can fix the proxy problem too, because proxies are something that MAMs do. They make proxies, and they can make it as soon as as soon as a piece of media is indexed, it'll make a proxy for you, and that proxy can be what saves the workflow and lets you actually work from home. Doesn't solve the speed because it's just working over an HTTP link. So it doesn't necessarily give you that sort of real-time access to the system. But if you're downloading for the purpose of getting speed locally on a local attached drive, and that's how you're achieving real time, then that could be solving the problem as well. So back to VPN. It's like you're there, except the VPN isn't WAN optimized. And once again, I'm talking about just the standard, you plug in your router and you say, I want to do a VPN. So basically it looks like a local hard drive or local network drive, but the problem is that your computer at home thinks it's a local network drive and it's not on the wide area network, not on the internet. So it treats it that way. And so it can be very spiky and very slow when it comes to how you move files around. It's slower than HTTP, at least I can I can see that that's happening from my desktop. And I talk to a lot of customers who say, I can upload to the cloud storage and then download it back to my desktop less time than it takes me to just pull it over the VPN. So, I consider that sort of field tested in that way, even though everybody's connection is different. And it's reliance on facility upload speeds. This is what really gets people, is that when you do a VPN, yeah, you're doing this tunnel through the internet, that kind of gets you into your local network at the facility, makes it look local to you at home. But every file you're accessing is pulling from the storage and thereby pulling up through the internet to your home station. So if you have a bunch of people hitting this at the same time, that's that many people times that file of upload speed that you need in the facility. And don't forget, you're probably using that same internet connection for everything else that's going on in that facility. So it's probably not dedicated. The folks who have done dedicated links to their ISP for the purpose of VPN, and they've shut down all sort of the reflective web traffic coming in from the remote workstations, and they've figured all that stuff out, they're using VPN really well. We have some customers that are using VPN and very happy with the performance they're getting. But basic VPN like you've set up today, it can be weak in terms of the upload speeds that are required and the speed of access that you get from the facility. Cloud, that big ubiquitous word that we talk about, it's everywhere, and you can get to it everywhere with just a browser and a laptop. But the problem is that there is initial and continuous uploads that have to happen. So it just doesn't run itself. You sort of have to make sure that it's uploading everything new that you want to have in the cloud, whether it be the master or the proxy, needs to be uploaded initially, which can take a long time to get those 100 terabytes up there. And it could really bring down the rest of the facility while it's doing it, unless you're throttling it once again. It's continuously, you have to be uploading these files. But in the end, you've only uploaded each file once, hopefully. Basic desktop access is weak. If you're just using a Explorer, from the standard Cloud Explorer services, some of them don't even let you download files. They let you just kind of look at them. But there's certain applications that are out there. We use Expand Drive. It's a kind of a cool thing, mounts the bucket right to your desktop on a Mac desktop. And it caches locally. You can tell it where to cache. So it does some cool things. But basic desktop access is pretty weak. It's not real intuitive. It doesn't really work in the workflow. And downloads are necessary. You're not streaming as a basic service. You're not streaming from the cloud like you are on YouTube or like you are on Netflix. It wants to download the file first before it gives you access to it from the applications. So once again, third-party magic notwithstanding. And it's costly, especially if you use it, because, using cloud storage means that the files aren't just sitting up there anymore. They're not just there as an archive. They're actually being downloaded over and over again, potentially. Go ask AWS how much that costs, and go ask Azure how much that costs. We use Wasabi storage, not making no value judgments about, what's faster or what's better. We use it just because we don't want to have to deal with the egress cost. So Wasabi storage and S3 enabled storage that allows us to just put everything up there, and then as many times as everyone hits it, it doesn't matter. And it's the only thing that matters is that it stays there for a certain amount of time, and that's what you pay for, is just that storage space. But yeah, it gets costly. And in selling people LTO versus cloud, I'm finding that about 100 terabytes is where you could be buying a whole LTO rig for what you're paying every year for the cloud. But that's not going to give you remote access. This is a 2019 conversation. So next up, MAM looks great, but one thing it requires is media indexing. So initially, to get all that stuff into the MAM, if you want to just sort of bulk everything into it, it's going to take some time. And that you need to be aware of that, especially if you're making proxies, especially if you're making red proxies and things like that. You're going to need some GPU in the server to do that. Otherwise, it's going to take days just using the software encoder for it, and per clip, I should say. So that's something that you have to think about. When you have a MAM that has a web interface, it's going through HTTP or HTTPS. And that's going to be different than VPN. It's on the WAN. It knows that it's on the WAN. It's going to be a bit faster for most people what they see. but downloads are necessary for editing. You're not going to edit directly off of the MAM. Once again, third-party magic notwithstanding. There are some, cloud editorial platforms out there, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about using your workflow, which is I have my Adobe Premiere per se on my desktop at home, and that's where I want to work because everything is fast and good, and that's where I want to do it. So their downloads are necessary at that point. It's a separate interface to learn. People aren't just dragging and dropping files anymore. They're searching for them, they're finding them. It's not too difficult, but you have to learn that interface. So something to be said for that is there is a ramp up for any asset management system. You'll see some samples of our asset management system. It tends to be much less of a ramp up than most. It's not as functional as a lot of them either, but you'll see that it does a lot of things very simply without too much of a ramp up time for people. So this goes through the internet as well, but it goes through a different type of pipe, of course, being HTTP instead of through VPN, similar to how you'd access cloud storage in a very basic way. So let's ask ourselves, why just one? Why do you have to settle on just one method of doing this? Because if you think about different ways of getting data back and forth, and you think about different ways of managing that data, either in place or remotely through an interface, you can kind of use these on top of each other. They can overlap. So what I'll talk about here is benefits of MAM plus VPN. So you have the VPN is going through the internet, and the MAM just sort of piggybacks on that at that point. Since the MAM is actually looking at the same server, potentially in our case, as you're using for the shared storage, it sees the IP address through the VPN, so it'll see the asset management database through the VPN as well. And you can open up the same interface at home as you can in the facility. So what this does for us is it kind of fills in some gaps. We can get full access to project-based storage because, once again, the MAM has indexed everything. And it's secure because you only have access to the catalog that you have access to through your user account. And proxy encoding can happen on demand. So where the VPN sort of lacked in that, sure, I get access to everything, but if all I get access to are these really heavy source files and the camera raws, what's it use to me? I can't even download one of those, it'll take me an hour. So I can actually now, through the MAM, say, I want a proxy of those. Have that proxy now sent right to that local volume. Of course, since I'm on a VPN, I'll be able to mount that directly to my workstation at home and use that proxy in lieu of the high-res, very large camera raws. And security for volumes and catalogs. So in the same way you'd have security through a VPN for the volume spaces or the project-based storage, you also have security through the MAM because it has catalog lock-off for user and password on that. So it sort of fulfills, sort of some of those things that VPN was weak at in general. The MAM sort of fills in for it. So when we talk about benefits of MAM and cloud, so you're on that HTTPS again, of course. So what you get is you get fast mass downloads of project media because, the cloud storage is accelerated and you're going to have, the best you can get in terms of you're pulling from the cloud. You're not dealing with like VPN, dealing with multiple people hitting the internal facility storage at the same time and bottlenecking on the upload speeds there. You're all just talking to the cloud, which is plenty of download speed for you. The proxy encoding can happen on demand and it can happen to the cloud. So basically you set up the MAM to point to the cloud with its proxies. So you can say, okay, I see that everything is here. I see the masters are here. I see the camera raws, the high res, and the very heavy files are here. I want proxies of those. Just having cloud alone doesn't necessarily do that. Once again, until you can put some cloud compute on there and get a little deeper into that. But if you want proxies, the MAM will do that for you, and it'll just push them right to the cloud. In our system, it's very easy to do that. And you have full access to indexed media. One thing the cloud wasn't very good at was, unless it was uploaded, you couldn't see it. So what the MAM does is it lets you see anything that's been indexed. So those old project files, those graphics, something from 2 projects ago that you didn't think you would need, or you didn't think anybody would need this month, so it wasn't uploaded, you get to go look at that. You get to go see that through the MAM. You get to download those files or call for a proxy to be sent to the cloud so you can see it. So those are ways that the MAM can sort of fill in the gaps with this with the cloud requirements. So let's go back now. Let's talk about those requirements that we first had when we first started talking about how we can get the workflow to happen through a remote access into a facility. Requirement 1 was transcode proxy or increase speed, right? Because you found that the people at home just didn't like the download speeds. At the facility, no one liked watching that upload happen. So now with MAM over VPN, I'm getting my MAM to do my proxies for me. I then access those proxies through the VPN down to 2 to 5 megabits per second for a good H.264 proxy or whatever I want to use with a cool time code burn-in, and I can use that, and I can sort of go on that all day just on a very slow VPN network. And of course, the idea is that you finish back at the facility with the high-res masters, or you can finish at home with the high-res masters. You're only downloading the selects at that point, but that gets more into editorial workflow. But check the box there. So you're all set. That works for you. So the next thing is, what about cloud? Well, cloud MAM helps there too, because you've transcoded everything before it hits the cloud. And if it hasn't hit the cloud yet, then you can use that HTTP access on the web client for the MAM to make a copy that'll hit the cloud, that'll be proxied down for you. And that solves the problem. Without having to gain any speed at the desktop at home, you've solved the problem of how to get people working on the media. As you can see here, I have a clip. It was shot in 4K. It's a little over a minute long, but it's a compressed 4K. It's 2.8 gigabytes in size. That'll take a while to come through the VPN or to download from the cloud. So I create basically what we call a HD high-res master. We don't make it too complicated. You can, if you want, you can be complicated about it. You can set your codec and everything, and what you're going to pass to the encoder and set it all up. Different frame rates and bit rates and codecs and all that. But at our base, we just say, hey, well, I'm going to make a high bit rate 1080 clip out of this for proxy, and it comes down to about 43 megabytes per second, from 43 megabytes total from 2.8 gigabytes. And it looks pretty good. Now I'm going way back here to AVR2 and AVR3 from the old Avid days. And I've seen some pretty messy stuff, some mud that took up a lot more space than that. So that's pretty good, when you can have that level of quality and still have that small of a file size. So moving on a bit to the alternate path requirement. So if you recall, the problem was that if I only have one set of media that someone's uploaded for me, I need an alternate path to get to the other stuff. So that's something we didn't have with cloud. You might have it with VPN, but you also might not, depending on what your permission to use at home, and maybe your permissions are different, home and in the office. And maybe it's on a NAS drive somewhere. It might not even be on the main SAN that you're using that you have access to from home. So the alternate path. This gives us a method through the MAM. So the MAM gives us an alternate path to get to that B-roll, to get to that graphics folder and that transcode folder when all we're seeing is the proxy folder up on the cloud. And that's really what, once everything is indexed, that's a major value for someone at home to be able to do that without calling into the facility and saying, hey, can you find that stuff from 2 weeks ago that we did and it's not in the proxy folder? Can you not only put that on the cloud but make a proxy for me to do that? You can do all that yourself. It'll be done, by the time you go get a coffee and come back. So checkbox there. So this is where you can have a clear directory browsing of all indexed media. This is our desktop browse for Fasttracker, and you can see all on the left-hand side there, it just shows you everything. So it's a very pragmatic way to see, you know, where has all the stuff been indexed, from what location. Everyone has naming conventions that they use. You know, if you're in post-production, you have a pretty solid idea of how you want to name things, project code, different sources that things are coming from, different camera masters, days, shoots, things like that. And that's all something you can look up and see here. So it's like you have the whole directory structure in the cloud storage from home, but you're just looking at it through the MAM. So let's go on to the next one, which is requirement number 3 of security. If you recall, this wasn't very secure when you had all of those different, you know, Costco, Macy's, and Sears all sitting in the same cloud storage. And that's something that's a no-no. We just can't do that anymore. It was fine for a while, guys, but come on, you can't do that anymore. So this is what solves it, is basically you index everything. And then you can use the MAM in this case. If you are really concerned about security and you can't do a VPN, you can only do cloud. And cloud, just at its base, it feels to you like, you know, it's not secure enough. You can't put everything in the same place and be comfortable with that. Then you just use the MAM. And I've said before, is the MAM through the web a way to actually get access to the media? It can be. You can bulk download large amounts of files through the media asset management system to your desktop at home, and you can do it in such a way as to be secure, because you have a Sears catalog, you have a Costco catalog, and you have a Macy's catalog. And each person working on each of those jobs only sees the media that's been indexed from those locations. But everything is available, you know, for them to download without having to do that upload step first of getting that to the cloud. Speed is speed, you know, and if they're proxied, they're going to be able to come down pretty quickly. But you know, this is not something where, like a cloud, you'd have a backup remotely or offsite, which is something that's very nice about the cloud, is that it serves a dual purpose. It backs everything up that you have in the cloud. It's a redundant copy now outside the facility. So if that facility goes dark, you can still work on it. VPN and this method still relies upon the server to be there and on the network and available remotely. But checks the box. Yep, security. We have that through the MAM system. Even if you're not using anything else, the MAM system gives you security of those projects. And you can see here that I have a catalog set up, and I can see that only of the 50 catalogs I might have for all the jobs that have gone through, I only can see my catalog, which is my Jim's catalog, which things I'll be putting in there, I'll label as in the Jim's catalog, and the Macy's catalog. That's what I'm working on this week. The footage has nothing to do with Macy's, of course. It's drone footage, but you'll see that that's all I see, you know, and that's as compared to all the catalogs that are there and all the media that's there, it's a very small subsection of that. With the time we have left, I think I have about 10 or 12 minutes. I'm going to go into a little demonstration, because I'm on a VPN here. I'm presenting from my home system. My home system is connected through a VPN. It's nothing special. It's open source, in fact. So I mean, it's not meant to be super fast, but you'll see how I can access the office. And let's keep our fingers crossed that nothing is going on at the office right now, like there was earlier today, that would cause a problem. And we'll do a short demonstration of Web Console and Fasttracker. Web Console is how we get access to our project-based volumes, and it's the same interface in the facility as we have outside the facility on a VPN. I'm not going to go into the cloud side. I figure with the time I have left, I'll just work on the VPN side. And Fasttracker is our asset management system. It comes in a sort of a web tech front end. It comes in an Adobe Panel. It has an application on the back end for the administration part of it, where you set up your proxies and catalogs and users and things like that. But as you'll see, it's pretty simple. So let me get out of this, and I'll show you a couple interfaces here. And once again, not going to press too many buttons and go through everything, with detail, because if you've never seen it before, then you're not going to know what I'm doing. So you just see here, I have this one volume mounted here. It says mounted, it's green, and it's local proxy. Now I'm working on a PC. I could be working on a Mac, and it would just show up on the desktop. And on PC, it shows up here as a network drive, network location here, local proxy. You'll see why in a minute, why I have just a local proxy mounted. And that's what we intend people to do on a VPN, is that if I've made the proxy for you, then you should just be mounting the proxy volume. So that's all I need this for, mount that one volume and be done with it. And now I have my Fasttracker login. Now the Fasttracker is coming up in this web tech front end. I'm going to do fasttrackerdemo.com. Now this is my web instance of this. Now I'm on a VPN, so I could either do the web instance if I log in like this and just say, okay, what did I log in as admin, or did I log in as Jim? Let me just make sure of that. Yeah, Jim. Okay, good. So I logged in as Jim. You see the only catalogs I see here are Jim's and Macy's. Macy's is set up for me to look at. So I'm going to go into here and see that this footage has nothing to do with Macy's. This is a drone footage. And you'll see here that I see some drone footage here. That was down in Virginia. I took that. That's not very impressive. But you'll see some here that I have. This is pretty small. I just want to do a quick demonstration of this. Not much going on. But this has no proxies. So this is the only way I can get access to this is to download the source file for it. But if that source file is too large, then I'm gonna have to make a proxy. So from here, from this web interface, just open up in a browser to a .com address that happens to point to my server in the facility, through the router and SSL and all that stuff, and gets complex on that side. But once it's done, it's done. I can do a proxy. I can say create proxy, low bit rate, go, and it says encoding. That shouldn't take long at all. It's only 2 seconds long. So I'm gonna just hit refresh here. You see a little icon popped up there, P. Well, that's the proxy. So now if I click off this and click back on, you see now I get a player. And that goes, and it's pretty simple. It's a little 2 seconds of drone footage over the pond down the street from me. And that's it. So I just very simply generated a proxy based on that. And now I don't have to download the full res master. I can download the proxy. And downloading the proxy, it says, yep, go ahead and do that. Open that up. And I actually set this browser to always download to my SSD locally into the downloads area. So there it is. And it's all of 171K. So anyone can play that through a VPN. That's not a problem. And in fact, I can go here and say, no, I can't do that on the web. Sorry. In the other version, that you can open up a player for the proxy separate from the master, and I'll show you that right now, because since I'm on a VPN, I don't have to use the web version of this. I can use the application version of this, and you'll see here that I'm just going to point to an IP address because I'm on the virtual private network, and I can see it. That's the same reason I can actually mount this volume here, is because I'm on the virtual private network. So I'll do this same thing. I'll go to catalogs. Oops, I logged in as the wrong person. So let me log out, go back in as Jim. And there's my catalogs, Macy's, come in here, and I can see all now the difference here is that through the application, this says, hey, I'm linked up with the volume management, and I can see that you have this volume available to mount if you want it. It says the proxy is online, green, and I can see here that all of my indicators say, yep, if the proxy is green, that means that the proxy exists locally accessible. It means it's on the volume that I have mounted here. Since the source is in blue, I go over here and this tells me S blue, that means the source files reside in a volume that can be mounted. Well, how do I mount that? Well, I just right mouse click on this and say mount. So now it mounts it to my workstation, and sure enough, I go in here, and there's the volume. It's called After the Storm. Some of this was taken after a storm. And so what I've done there is I've just basically said, you know what, I want to use the source now instead of the proxy. And now once I drag this anywhere, it's going to drag the source file out. I can open it up directly into my player and have that seen real time. It's only 13 megs, so it shouldn't take more than a couple seconds to open up. And so, of course, it is a VPN connection. So, but that's the source. Taking 13 megs for 2 seconds is trying to play back 6 megabytes per second. That's probably a little too much, for the VPN. But the proxy will play back just fine. In fact, I go over here to the proxy, and I should be able to say, "Hey, proxy, play external." And that opens up much smaller, and that'll play real time for me. So, just a little example of sort of how I can get access to things through VPN, because I'm on the VPN and the MAM is as well. And I can, of course, do the same thing here. This is, let's go a little bit larger here and find this file here. It's 135 megs, way too big for me to try and play directly from my VPN or for me to download from the cloud, for example. So I'll go create proxy here, low bit rate, and that goes off and encodes. So while that's going, I'm going to show you the other side of this, which is the Adobe Panel. The Adobe Panel is the same thing. It just opens up in Adobe. Since I'm on a VPN, I can just load this up as, the .80, which is my server back at the office. Log in here. Since I'm the same user, I just say, yep, go back right into that Macy's folder or catalog and find that clip I was just down, proxy. You see here the proxy bubble is P. The P is orange. Let's go see what that means. The orange means that the proxy generation is queued, or it's encoding. In this case, it's encoding. So I'll just hit update on that, and we'll see that turn over to either a green or a gray, depending on when that finishes. There it goes. Now it's green, so that proxy is now available to me. So if I didn't have the source volume mounted here, and I just had the proxy in green, then I could import this file as the proxy. It would just import the proxy instead of the source, because the source isn't there. And so it says, oh, you want to import this record, but all you have is the proxy, so I'm going to import the proxy for you. So in this case, since I have the source mounted here, and I just do this import, it goes and says, there you go. I'm going to import the source for you. It's 135 megabytes. It doesn't have to download the whole thing for Adobe to place it into the project. But I'm not going to try and play it because it's well, sure, let's try and play it. It'll play for a second. Oh, there it goes. So that's basically how the panel hooks up with Adobe and allows you to import. By the way, had this been transcribed, which is something that we do by default within Fasttracker, there's no audio, but had this been transcribed, had there been markers on it, had there been comments and keywords and tags on it, all that would appear within the Adobe metadata as well. Because we are now aligned with Adobe when it comes to importing all the metadata as well as the proxy information for the clip. So the proxy toggle on the timeline works with proxies that are being generated by Fasttracker. But enough about that. So as you can see, I've done a few things here that allow me to sort of fill those gaps with the cloud storage, with the VPN storage, the things that it can't do for me. A major thing being give me access to everything in the facility, even though I don't have it in the cloud bucket. The main thing for VPN is allow me to create a copy of this file that's smaller so I can use it on a VPN. Allow me to do that through the MAM, and the MAM actually gives me that possibility. And Fasttracker is no charge with Facilis systems. It's not built to be sort of the Uber MAM PAM system that's going to help you monetize your assets with rights management and all this stuff and go off and do 100 different things. This is meant to track your assets on the facility. It's meant to give you access to those in as many places as possible, and it's meant to do it in a very simple way. So I hope that you got a lot out of this. We're just at about 10 minutes to 6. And Eric has given me a question. Can I host a MAM in the cloud? That's a good point. And we don't do that today because the only places that we host a MAM are on Facilis servers themselves. And although we have toyed around with the idea of putting a Facilis server in the cloud, we're not avid. We don't have that requirement from our customers at this point. But certainly it's something we can think about. And of course, being compatible with cloud-based VPNs that are or cloud-based virtual machines, we can certainly do that in the future if it's necessary. But thanks for the question, Eric. I appreciate that. Everything we do is on-prem. We do on-prem servers, we do on-prem turnkey systems, and then those on-prem systems can be caching systems for the cloud and caching systems for the cloud and working in a hybrid environment as well. But what we really do well is on-prem storage. And I hope that explains a little bit about how we use our on-prem storage and the tool sets that we have to make those accessible to the remote workers, and how you can get those remote workers to be more efficient through some of these processes that I've shown you.
All right.
So I can
Thank you
pass
so
this
much,
back to
Jim.
Chris. Chris, are you good?
Yeah. No, thank you so much for your presentation, Jim. And we have time for any last minute questions for those of you who have been joining us. Thank you so much. Let's see. We already answered that one. Otherwise, it's great stuff. You know, a lot of questions being asked in our remote world now. So a lot of decisions being made.
You know, I'm Jim at Facilis.com. If you have any questions for me, of course, Facilis Technology is the company that I've been with for the past 16 years since its inception. And, you know, we do a lot of this. And so if you have any questions about how we're doing it, please feel free to shoot me a line at jim@facilis.com.